All right. Hi, folks. I think we are starting to have people funnel on in. Thanks for joining us. We're going to get started pretty promptly because we have a lot to cover today. But we're excited to have you all for this New York City Independent Budget Office deep dive. It should be pretty good. We're going to go over a number of documents today that are all publicly available. If you are missing anything or needing to review some information, all of this will be available on our socials and on our website relatively shortly. So this is being recorded for posterity's sake. Again, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. That is what we're here for. So we're just going to give people about another 2 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and get going. And if you have any questions, do feel free to drop them into the chat. We have our very trusty communications department out here looking at and monitoring the chat today. So we'll go ahead and have all of that figured out. And so we'll have people pinging me and doing questions like that. So. Seeing a lot of familiar names in the attendees list. So thanks for your support, pals. Good to see you all as always, and hope you had a lovely long weekend. All right, folks, we're gonna go ahead and get started here. Again, this is the review of the FY26 adopted budget by the New York City Independent Budget Office. My name is Logan Clark. I am the Assistant Director of the Budget Review Team here at IBO. My team covers citywide budgetary costs, so things like collective bargaining, pensions, and overall budget processes. So we're kind of your one-stop shop if you want to figure out a question about the technicalities of the budget. And that's sort of what we're going through today. This is really sort of a teach to fish type webinar. And so even if you don't have all of your questions answered today, our goal is to make sure that you feel like you have the tools to ask those questions of us going forward. So we're going to go ahead and just pop into our agenda real quick. Oh, sorry, wrong way. Again, I'm Logan. We're joined by Hannah and Malik from our communications team. All of our contact information is here, and they're going to go ahead and drop that in the chat. So if you do have questions, feel free to reach out to any of us, all of us, and we can make sure that you get flowed to the right person that will answer your question. So just really quickly, what is IBO? The Independent Budget Office is a nonpartisan city agency providing data-driven fiscal and policy insights into how New York City's government and services operate. We are a independent city agency, so we are not under the mayoralty, we're not under the comptroller, we're a special secret third thing. So if you do have questions, we serve each and every single person that calls New York home, and we are here supported by your tax dollars. So do reach out to us, avail yourselves of our expertise here, and we'll be happy to help you out. Just to go over the agenda today, we sort of have three big buckets of things that we're going to talk about. First is just key terminology. And so we're going to talk about a couple of things that we'll be going over. Then we're going to go through the overview documents and the detail documents. Again, what this training is today is to really go through what it looks like when a budget is released. And so We just released the adopted budget, and by we, I mean the city, released the adopted budget on the 1st of July. It was negotiated upon, had a handshake the Friday before. Details started coming out on that Monday. And so we run on a July 1 fiscal year, so it runs all the way through. So we are just starting essentially right at the turn of the fiscal new year. Which is great because it gives us a real good opportunity to teach all of you how to interpret a budget and how to find a little bit more information into the programs and things that you're interested in. And so we're going to go ahead and start going through. We do have a packed schedule today. There's a lot to dig into on a lot of this, so we're going to keep it moving along. But again, if you have questions, drop them in the chat. We'll try to get to all of them as we can. And if not, you can always ping us. So let's go ahead and start with a couple of basic terms. First of all, the thing that we are going to be focusing on today is the city's operating budget or expense budget. This is effectively the general fund. It's composed of two primary items, the expense budget and the revenue budget. And we'll be calling it the budget often, but we're using that sort of interchangeably with another term, which is called the financial plan. The budget is technically just for the current fiscal year. And so whatever, July 1 to June 30th period that we are in, we're currently in fiscal year 2026. But that needs to be balanced at all points in time. So your revenues must equal your expenses. We're going to get into what that looks like as we go through the documents. But we also have the financial plan, which is for a 3 to 4 year out year window. And so when we talk about out years, that's essentially the years that are coming. And so right now we're in FY26. Starting next July 1 is FY27. And so that's sort of what we'll be looking at when we talk about the financial plan. That is entirely separate from the city's capital budget, which is used to pay for larger, typically physical infrastructure and assets for government or public use. Think things like your schools, your roads, your park infrastructure. It has to have a minimum cost of at least $50,000, be a complete asset or a betterment to an asset, and have a useful life of at least 5 years. And so if we think about it, this is really sort of splitting it out between the city's debit card and the city's credit card. And so on the debit card side, that's the operating budget. That's the thing that we pay cash for at all points in time. But then on the capital budget, we're actually making payments on it. And so, that's, well, maybe not necessarily a credit card, but like a mortgage would be a good way to think about it. It's anything that we're financing over a longer period of time. And we do a lot of that as well, but we're really not going to talk about that today in this budget, or sorry, in this webinar. And then the other thing that we're just going to talk about, the budget documents come in a couple of different flavors. And so we want to sort of make sure that when you're looking at a budget document, you have this in the back of your mind. The first is whether it's a position or an increment type of document. And if we think about this, the position shows you what the overall budget is. And so that could be on a varying level of granularity. It could be for the entire city. It could be for an agency. It could be for a program. But it talks about what the overall level of funding is for either a program or a tax. And so if we think about it that way, it's sort of the whole kit and caboodle there. The other thing that we have is an increment. And so that will tell you the changes that have come out since the last published budget. And so when you put those two things together, you start getting a fuller picture of things. But as you look at budget documents, it's really important to sort of understand what type of document you're looking at and whether it's a position document or an increment document. The other item that is sort of a key granularity item to think about is whether or not this is referring to dollars or headcount. And so the city budgets both for the full fiscal cost of programs, but it also budgets out the staff that are necessary to fund those programs and to execute those programs. And so you'll often hear things thrown around like vacancy savings or what's the established headcount, the budgeted headcount versus the actual headcount. And that sort of refers to the level of staffing that they've have budgeted for a certain program versus what they're actually they have sort of working on that project at a given point in time or at that agency. And so those are the key things that we're going to be taking a look at. That's just the set of slides. What we're going to do is we're actually going to switch over to the Office of Management and Budget's website. And I think there's a few folks from there today or from over there today in the attendees list. So a lot of you will have seen this before, but we'll go ahead and we'll go through. So we're dropping the links in the chat, but when you go to the Office of Management and Budget's website, the tab that we're going to be looking at is the publications website or the publications page. And so this will have every single financial plan that has been released over the past year or for the current year. So you can look through finding the various years depending on when where your sort of scope of inquiry is. The budget that we're going to be looking at today is the one that was just released because this gives you a really good idea of sort of how a fiscal year starts, what information you can find out, and sort of carry that forward into a couple of other lessons. Not every plan has the exact same documents. They're not all arrayed in the same way. Typically, that's because of various requirements that are put out within the charter. And so that's something that as we take a look, that might be a little bit different depending on what the plan is. But if you sort of keep those key principles and key terminology in mind, you should be able to decipher what's going on. So we're going to go ahead and take a look here into the June 2025 adopted budget for fiscal year 2026. And they'll bring us to this landing page. And what we have at the start of every adopted budget is mostly effectively enacting legislation that's been passed by City Council to make this budget pass into law effectively. And there's a lot of interesting things in there. It's not really going to be the focus of this. If you do have questions about that, do reach out to us. But it's mostly an enacting document. And it's not really where we're going to find a lot of our sort of 30,000 foot level detail that we'll need to have to interpret the budget. So where we find that, however, is within this first document called the financial plan. That might be hidden in something called like a summary, but effectively what we are looking for is this, the city's gap sheet. And this is really, really helpful because it tells us very broadly where our sources of revenue are and where what we're using them for. And so this is just a really important document. It's if we think back to the terminology, this is a position document. It tells us the overall levels of the budget. It tells us what our overall gaps are between our revenues and expenses. And I'm going to go ahead and actually zoom out just a little bit if we can, because we want to be able to see down to the bottom here. But broadly speaking, we've got the top section covers our revenues, the bottom section covers our expenditures, and down here we have a gap to be closed. And we were talking about this earlier, but the general fund is required by law to be balanced every single year. We'll get a little bit into how the city does that. But the gap to be closed here, you can see in fiscal year 2025 and fiscal year 2026 is 0. And so we're good in those 2 years, which is required by law. We're allowed to carry gaps in the out years, and you don't need to bring those into balance until the January before those fiscal years start. But we'll sort of go through that in a little bit more detail as we sort of walk through. But as you can see up here, we have in the revenue section, we have a breakout of various categories. We start with our taxes. The city receives the majority of its funding from its tax base, the largest of which comes from property tax. And so obviously it's a hot button topic in a lot of electoral races, whether that be the comptroller's race, the mayoral race. But the property tax provides a huge amount of funding to the city of New York, and it's overwhelmingly the largest. We have just a larger grouping here of other taxes. The next largest tax after the property tax is the income tax, then followed by general sales tax. And so between all of that, we are receiving roughly between 80 and $88 billion of the city's revenues on a yearly basis in the years of the financial plan. And so that's a huge sum of money. The New York City budget is larger than I believe I think 4 states, or larger than all states except for 4. That being New York, California, I think maybe Illinois and Texas. I'll have to go back and check on that. But we have a huge budget. The city of New York is larger than most other entities within the country. And so taxes provide a huge amount of that. The next portion that we are looking at is miscellaneous revenue. If you have ever paid a parking ticket or have signed up for a rec center membership at a park, miscellaneous revenues are essentially non-tax revenues that the city collects, whether that be through fines, fees, or services provided. That's what that line refers to. There's some other miscellaneous revenue that's included in there called intracity revenue. Wouldn't worry too much about that. That's essentially when one agency sells goods or services to another agency. And so we actually have it backed out of the revenue up here, but we also have it backed out of expenses down this way. And so it ends up netting out on the gap sheet. We have a couple of other sort of smaller lines in here, but the real sort of next thing that we want to cover is grant funding. And so grants we typically get from either the federal government or the state or other private entities. The state is by far and away the largest of those three. We, in the financial plan, the city has budgeted between 18, almost 19 billion to 21 billion, roughly speaking, over the course of the financial plan. The state funds large parts of the city's education expenditures. A whole number of programs are funded by the state. And then federal spending makes up between about 7 and 11 billion throughout the financial plan window. That amount is the federal amount is decreasing over the course of the current financial plan. That's not really a factor of the current actions at the federal government and federal level quite yet. It's more a reflection of a winding down of stimulus programs within the city's budget. We haven't really seen the effects of the big beautiful bill or anything like that yet. But if there are effects, they'll be reflected in future budget releases, I'm sure. So that's on the revenue side. We're going to flip this over to how do we spend our dollars? And so the expenditure side. There are 2 broad categories of expenditures: personal services, which is everything that is related to staffing and compensation for staff. So, my salary is in this bucket. If you're another city employee, your salary, your health benefits, your pension contributions, all of that's in personal services. And then the other part of that is, or the other side of this is the ever so cleverly named other than personal services. So effectively, we have all staffing costs and then anything that's not staffing. The non-staffing costs can be anything from pencils and paper and chairs for city offices to things like medical assistance payments or cash assistance payments for various programs. But broadly speaking, it's just anything that is not going directly to a city worker's salary or compensation. So the other thing that does pop up is debt service. And so debt service is the linkage between the city's capital budget and the expense budget. You can think of this as the payments that you would make on a credit card or the payments that you would make on a mortgage. And that's essentially what the city is paying out on an annual basis to service its debt. And so that's a bit of a circular argument, but if you've ever made a payment, you think of it just in terms of your household expenses. It's the same thing as making any sort of finance payment that you would have in there. The next two lines that we have here are really, really interesting because if you'll recall, everything needs to be balanced. Everything needs to zero out between revenues and expenditures. And so you say, Logan, what happens when you have surplus tax dollars? And that's a great question because we have several methods of essentially using operating surplus for the city. And so the city will often prepay its debt. And so this debt service line, this just records what's going out on an annual basis, but some of that might be for things that we are prepaying for the coming year, or the city is prepaying for the coming year. And so that's one particular way that the city can use its surplus. Another way is that it may prepay its retiree health benefits contributions. And so that's sort of operates on a similar way of prepaying expenses. Or the city can add funds to its reserve funds. And so the city wasn't previously allowed to carry a rainy day fund. But that was changed by legislation in, I believe, 2019. And the city has since started making deposits into that. That currently stands at about $2 billion. And then that sort of is something that goes through. And Anthony, we've got a question: to whom is the debt service owed? And that is typically institutional borrowers, or sorry, institutional creditors. We'll go ahead and we might have to follow up on that in terms of just like a deeper question, but I'll have the comms team make a note of that and we can reach out. The other side of this is the city has several budgeted reserve funds that happen and are budgeted for on an annual basis. And so that's about $1.45 billion that we keep, or the city keeps essentially in contingency. And so you'll see these start to be drawn down on over the course of a year. That typically the city will start to draw down on those funds through generally like the November plan to the January plan is when you'll start seeing that happen. And so we get down to the overall gap, which is just the total revenues less the total expenditures. And you can see, again, we're balanced out for FY25 and FY26, but starting in FY27, we have gaps of $5 billion, $6.1 billion, and then almost another $6 billion in FY29. These aren't historically large gaps. We typically tend to look at them, in a ratio to the city's tax base, the overall base of tax revenues. Currently, this is roughly about the same that we've been seeing for a little while. It spiked initially during the start of the asylum seeker crisis in terms of what the gaps were looking like. That has evened out a bit. And if you're interested in the asylum seeker crisis, IBO has a couple of really great pieces on that, which you can see on our website. But broadly speaking, this is what the city's gap sheet is. And again, this is a position document, so it just tells you the overall position. But what we're going to start looking at next is all of the things that make up this position. And so the changes that have happened since the last plan. So the next thing that we are going to look at is the financial plan update document. And this is a really helpful one-pager. I really like this document because it tells you in broad categories everything that they have changed since the last budget. And so it will tell you up here on this top line, where did we start? And then where are we ending down here? So this is really helpful if you're just looking for a quick and dirty on essentially what are the budget actions that they just took. And so it won't tell you everything that the city has done since the beginning of time. It won't tell you individual programs, but this gives you a really good idea of, what's going on here. And so as you sort of look through this, we can see in the revenue changes, we've got tax revenue increases. That's likely due to, a change in the tax forecast. But you would have to look further to sort of see what's going on. But this is, again, just that 30,000-foot view, really quick and dirty on, essentially $120 billion worth of funding. So it will give you a really quick view here. We can see the state budget impact. The state budget came out after the executive budget about a month late. And so there wasn't necessarily time for the city to fully account for all of the changes that were happening during the executive budget. So you see some of this true up happening right now. You can see changes in forecasts to non-tax revenues. Diana's got a question about congestion pricing revenues. That actually is something that accrues to the state. And so if you are interested in congestion pricing, we do have some pieces on that. I think Malik or Hannah can drop that in the chat. But the MTA is actually a state authority, much to the consternation of former Governor Cuomo, if you remember the Cuomo de Blasio years. But we can go ahead and talk about that a little bit later, but we're just going to focus strictly on the city side of this right now. And so we can get into the expense changes. And so this is, again, pretty broad. The descriptions aren't particularly helpful in here in all cases, but it gives you broad categories. So we can see agency expense changes. These are things that have increased the city's, essentially the city's forecast of its expenditures. You can see that they've taken a little bit of savings, although that's pretty minimal over the course of this past plan. At least on the projected PS and OTPS, they're taking some more savings out of asylum seekers or the asylum seeker program. That is starting to wind down and just be incorporated into the city's sort of usual budgeting. If you look back a couple of years, obviously the asylum seeker sort of line items were not there prior to the crisis happening, but it's been something that's been called out in recent budget publications. The next line that we have here is initiatives. This is things that council is negotiated for within the most recent adopted budget. And so when we go through the next document, which is a line by line change, you'll see all of this start to add up into these numbers that we have here. So this 609 is a number that we should all remember. We've got a couple of other things going on. Labor reserves are being taken down. The city holds funds centrally to account for labor agreements. And so if there's a change in headcount or a change in what the city anticipates that it's going to need to cover collective bargaining agreements, they might take those down. It's something that as budget monitors, we will go ahead and ask things about. And yes, Arturo, I'm about to get to that. So, Jim, this is actually the change compared to the last plan. So not since FY24, but literally since May 1st. So these are the changes that we've made, over the past of 2 months, essentially. So the city, just to, go back to square one for a quick second, the city releases 4 financial plans a year. And so this financial plan update document is going to be whatever has changed in the budget since that last financial plan update. And so that's when we're looking at this sort of this rolling change that we have here. And so we have more state budget impacts. We had them both on the revenue side and then also on the expenditure side. This is essentially saying that we anticipate that the state is going to be giving us less revenues, or we're having less revenues as a result of the state budget, but then we're also going to need to spend more as a result of the state budget. So that's something to keep in mind. And then we also have some changes to the pension, debt service, and general reserves. And then Arturo, you were asking why, if the total revenue changes and the total expense changes are not the same, how do we get to the zero down here? And the answer is in the prepayment, the budget stabilization that we were talking about earlier. Essentially, what the city is doing here is, we had this, we start out with this zero here. We add in 435 in revenue, and then we also take down 402 in expenditures. That gives us 837 million more dollars to play with within the current fiscal year. And typically the way the city budgets, they're trying to keep a lid on the next year that's coming up. And so they'll make those changes essentially equal out. And so that's what we see here. We've got the gap to be closed before prepayments. We've got the 837 that we've got from this current year. We've got a negative 837 here. And essentially they make this adjustment to the prepayment and it all closes out. It's a little bit squirrely. And if you have more questions about it, you can feel free to ask me. It's a little bit like, if you're trying to wrap your head around it, it can be a little bit difficult, but it's essentially saying that, if we think about this from a personal finance standpoint, it'd be like, oh, I got an end of the year bonus that I wasn't anticipating. Now I have all of this extra revenue. I've also, I've been bringing my lunch to work every day, so I'm not spending as much. And so those two items combined have given me this much more revenue. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to reduce the amount that I have to pay on my mortgage next year by prepaying it right now. And that's sort of the example that I will always fall back to. There's a joke in here somewhere about millennials never being able to have a mortgage, but that's something that, we still know the mechanics of it. So as we take a look through this, and then well, actually, we're not really talking about the banks today, Anthony. But if you do have questions about that, just go ahead and reach out to the comms team. It's less, like what bank do we have, and this is more of like what is the city's budget. But the city holds accounts with, I believe, a couple of banks, but it's more of a comptroller question. But we'll go ahead and we'll keep flowing through the documents here. So this document is actually very helpful to look at the line-by-line changes that are happening, or sort of program-by-program changes that are happening with the city's budget. And so as we take a look at this, and Camellia, this sort of relates to the Schedule C side in terms of what we're looking at. This doesn't have all of it. Most of this is kind of wrapped up all together, but this does include all of those changes. So as we're looking through the financial plan reconciliation, there's a lot of summary tables to start out. Not all of this. This is still kind of overall level. You have a couple of different categories within here: initiatives, collective bargaining, savings programs, the budget stabilization or prepayment. And you can see you've got the sort of start here at the executive budget versus the adopted budget. And so that's the side of this that this sort of shows. This is all tabulated and summed on a by page level, so it's a little bit difficult to pull out the exact totals of this. But what we're going to do is, this is also broken out fiscal year by fiscal year. But we're actually going to look at the detail on this a little bit more, because if we go through this, we can actually start finding what's going on with individual agencies. And so As we can see before, or as we were sort of noting before, we had that 609 million that was showing up as initiatives within the financial plan update. All of these lines here are going to add up to that 609 million. And you can start seeing here, these are the things that council has been identifying as spending priorities and they negotiated for within the budget. So some of this includes the Schedule C allocations. That typically is rolled up under these local initiatives, so it won't necessarily break out the exact item. I do know that council puts out a database of those Schedule C allocations. So if you are interested in those, you should refer to their website for more detail. But we'll sort of go through what this looks like right now. And this is the real part of where we're hoping to sort of draw your attention, get you curious, and then you can always turn to us to ask a little bit more about things. Because as you can see just from the sort of initiatives page, and we'll go through the other adjustments as well, but a lot of these are not particularly descriptive. I think it's probably the best way to put it. We've got things for adult literacy. It's like, okay, that's an adult literacy program. That's relatively understandable. Local initiative, though, I don't know what that means. Or as we go through, I'm going to go to the other initiatives because I think that's probably the most, yeah. So if we look at, other initiatives within here, you can see there's all sorts of basically alphabet soup that's getting thrown around and I don't even know all of it, but there's a lot of this where this is not going to be, readable to the lay person. And so if you are interested in some of this, you can find the changes that are happening within the agencies that you're interested in other adjustments on the city funded side. So this is going to show everything that we are making changes to that is funded by the city. It's not going to include state funded items or federally funded items. Those may be published within the revenue side. I would have to double check on that. But there are other ways that you can sort of take a look at that. But if you are looking for something, do feel free to reach out to us. But just for instance, we're looking at like here on the Department of Emergency Management, we have a PS adjustment. So if we go back and we think it's like, okay, PS, that's the personal services side. They're making an upward adjustment for their Department of Emergency Management's staffing budget. We have things like re-estimates versus savings for asylum seekers. We've got a couple of different lines for that within emergency management. There's not a lot of detail there, right? There's things like if we look here at the Office of Administrative Tax Appeals line, we've got an AWADA to DOF transfer. So there's a lot of alphabet soup. If you're interested in some of these changes, do reach out to us. Our analysts are very knowledgeable about their specific agencies, or we can find the right person to talk to about them. So this is really sort of the meat here, that if you are interested in a particular agency, or a program area, you can start looking through the financial plan reconciliation. It's a really great spot to find a lot of the information that you could be interested in. And so that is, I believe, what we're going to cover on that item. The next one that we are going to look at is actually, hold on one second. Let me find, this is always a problem. There we go. So the next one that we have is the financial plan expense document. If you look here, this is down here, the financial plan expense. This is a really helpful document because it tells you the funding of a specific agency on an agency by agency basis, but then also rolled up for all of the city as well. And so if we look here, it is sort of arrayed in a really sort of old school sheet. This is also affectionately known as the Rosen Run. So if you hear people refer to it as that, it's because there was a long time first deputy director over at OMB, Bernard Rosen, who designed this report and uh, uh, basically advised mayors all the way back from John Lindsay, I think through David Dinkins, maybe even Giuliani first go around. So he was an immensely influential person at the bureaucracy, and just sort of goes to show that if you put the work in at some point in time, maybe you too one day will have a FMS, the City Financial Management System report named after you. We could only all be so lucky. But if we take a look here, we have a breakout between your total city, as well as your personal services, your other personal services, and the various funding sources. And so this is a really helpful look because, especially with all of the news going on at the federal level right now and unclear ramifications coming down from the federal level, what impact that's going to have on the state. Keeping an eye on this document is actually going to be really, really useful because it's going to start telling you the proportion of the city budget that is city funded versus federally funded versus state funded. So this is going to be a really useful document going forward. And so if you take a look at it, it's all in thousands here. So when we're looking at this, we're not looking at 123 million, we're looking at 123 billion on this. But we can see down here the overall city funds for FY25 as of the adopted plan was $87 billion. And then we can sort of go through here. We have other categorical, which is typically funding from other private organizations. If you get a sort of a grant from an organization, sometimes utility companies also help contribute to various costs that may show up in the capital budget, but there's other things that go on in there. There's also, uh, like if someone buys a bench for a park to commemorate, their a memorial for their relative, that may show up. There's various ways that private actors also put funds into the city budget. We also have capital funds, or IFA. That's interfund agreement. That's essentially a way for the city to bond out for capitally related work for its staff. So, let's say you're a landscape architect over at the Department of Design and Construction. A lot of your work is actually something that the city could bond out for. And so there's various funding sources in here. We have federal community development funds, which is the funds that flow through community development block grants or entitlement funding. And then we have other types of federal funds that flow in from other sources. So that's split out. But again, this is a really useful document. You can start comparing interesting agencies. We sort of talked about them earlier, but the Department of Education, for instance, receives a large amount of funding from the state. And so we can see here, it's between 13.7 and 14.2 billion over the course of the financial plan, out of a total of 34 billion. So a huge amount of state funding goes towards the city's Department of Education. It's actually really similar to a lot of other states, a lot of other jurisdictions. Education is a primarily state-funded issue for most states, locally and state-funded. So. I've got a question from Emily Pisano. How does Capital Fund IFA in the financial plan differ from what's outlined in the city's capital plan? If we sort of think about it, the capital IFA dollars are essentially what the city is spending on its own staff to help capital projects move along. And so while, if to go back to that example where I'm a a landscape architect at the Department of Design and Construction. I still get paid out of the general fund, but those that amount of funding is actually reimbursed by bond proceeds from the projects that I've been working on. And so that's a little bit of a simplification, but that's essentially the way that we sort of look at it. But if we take a look at, say, another department that is not like education, you can see here, even just for, let's find a good one. If we look at the Department of Veteran Services, comparatively, it's a much smaller department, but it's also much more simply funded. It's almost entirely city funds. They have some state dollars, and then it also looks like they do a little bit of intra-city business with other agencies. And so if we think about it from this regard, this is gets into how various agencies are funded in their work. The last document that we are going to go over today, and we're just going to spend a real short time on this, and then we're just going to get to other people's questions if folks have any, but is the revenue detail budget. This is a really helpful document if you're looking for changes to individual taxes and the forecast for those. It also looks at the miscellaneous revenue budget. So again, those fees, fines, and services that are being provided, as well as changes to the federal, state, and categorical side. So those types of changes are all recorded within here. This is here, we'll zoom in so that we're not straining, at the very least, my eyes. I don't know how everyone else's are doing, but mine are getting weaker by the day. But if we look here, we can see the overall position that they have here for the adopted 2026 budget. And so this is, again, we'll have the budget for FY26, but then the financial plan window for the rest of the out years, as well as the budget for the current year. We can see that it's broken out here. So when we were looking at the gap sheet earlier, we just had property and then all other taxes. We get a lot more detail on here for the rest of the taxes. So the personal income tax, our business income taxes, our sales and use taxes, all sorts of things. We've been doing a little bit of work on the cannabis tax. If you haven't read our papers yet, please do. It's a really interesting spot that or a new interesting tax that is developing because of shift from a black market to a gray market to a fully legalized market in places. So there's really interesting growth there and factors. Just as a plug for our other team's work, they're doing a great job, or they're doing a great job on all of that. But we have all of our different taxes on here. We also have all of our miscellaneous revenue. And then if we go down, we can actually see what they've done to change that. So if you recall back on the financial plan update, we can see, let's go. This is driving me nuts. Sorry. I loathe the share bar on Zoom. That's why I'm a Microsoft Teams man through and through. But if we take a look at the financial plan update, we can see in here, we had all of these tax changes. And so if we look at the revenue plan detail, we'll start seeing what the total of that change was. And so we can see here the subtotal tax changes. They added that 308 that we saw. And then we've got the increase of 309 we were seeing, and then we can also see the negative 61 down here, which wasn't due to changes that the city made to its forecast, but rather from the state budget impact. And so that's something that's included in there. I'll have to double check on what that state budget impact was. I'm pretty sure I know what it is, but I don't want to give you the wrong information. So we can go ahead and talk about it later. But this is a really helpful document just to see the breakout for every change. This is a really detailed document as well. I'm just going through the first couple pages here, but we have, I think, roughly 150 some odd pages of changes to the revenue book. So if you are interested, you can look through this and peruse it at your leisure. But that is all of the documents that we were going to show today. Again, this is really a way that we are trying to make sure that you feel more comfortable in asking us questions. If you do have any of those, you can always reach out to us. We are here to take your calls, as they used to say on those public media phone-a-thons. But if anyone has any questions right now, we can absolutely take some of those. Got one in the Q of A. So Emily from FPWA, let's see, typically receives additional grants from the federal and state level throughout the fiscal year. Why do additional grants become available throughout the year for specific programs? So that is a good question, Emily. One thing that I will say is that certain grants tend to flow on a rolling basis. So let's say I get a $1 million grant from any sort of granting entity. Let's just say, federal DOT. I get a $1 million grant and I put it up, all of it within the first financial plan year. I spend 3,000 of that. What will then happen is I will take down, as that fiscal year closes out, I will take down that remaining 700,000 and put it up into the next fiscal year, and it will roll on until we essentially have closed out the entire grant amount. That's how some grants work. Other times, things just become available as a result of grantors' actions, and so you know, if there's a hurricane and a disaster relief grant that pops up midway through the year, that's something that would come through. Sometimes the state makes changes that we would see. So there is a certain level of that happens. As to the last part of your question, do you anticipate that the city will receive less additional grants throughout the fiscal year due to federal budget cuts? We're really not sure at this point in time. The sort of fallout or impact of the big beautiful bill really remains to be seen. But that is something that we are monitoring closely. So not to punt on it, but it's kind of too early to tell at this juncture. Let's see. What ends up, Camelia's got a question. What happens with the dollars that were allocated that end up not being spent? It's a really good question. As we sort of covered earlier, a lot of that goes into that prepayment that typically happens. Generally, it's prepayment of debt for the most part. For recent years, it's also possible that we put that towards reserve funding. The other thing that happens is, we're looking at this as like a $116 billion budget, $115 billion budget. A lot of things happen within all of that as well. So, if the independent budget office does not spend all of its funding, doesn't necessarily mean that other agencies are doing the same. So there might be other spots where any number of factors could happen that may cause another agency to overspend some of its budget as well. And there are fiscal controls around that, and the city tries to make sure that doesn't happen. But there are occasionally times where things like that happen. And so there's a little bit of a balancing that happens out there. And then Anil's got a question. Can you review again what initiatives are and how they relate to an agency or an office's overall budget? And so, yes, the initiatives that we were looking at before, that's specifically during the adopted plan, where the initiatives are the items that are negotiated for by New York City Council. And those get added into, and I'll go ahead and I'll just sort of share here. Um, and I think Malik, if or Hannah, if you can, I'm just going to share my screen again, if that's fair. I think there was some pinning that happened. But if we take a look at some of these initiatives, we can see, this are things that are being funded by essentially by through negotiation with council. Some of them are lined out, others are not. It's not necessarily the entirety of that program, but it is what the council has negotiated for. If you're wondering what the impact of those initiatives is on an entire program, do reach out to us because we are able to see past this. We have access to more information, and we can help you either point you in the right direction or help you find an answer about how the agency's budget is structured. So, and then I think we also have from Thomas Naim Huzij. Is there a partner document that offers definitions or explanations for ambiguous budget items? Yes, that is a good question. I would recommend reaching out to us. There are some things where it will just be really vague. Oftentimes uh, the if we think about the sort of technical constraints on things, when the agencies or the Office of Management and Budget are putting together the titles for these, it's actually into a very old program that has a text character limit. And so a lot of this is actually, being sandwiched down from, a larger, broader description into something that is just like really short, really sweet, and may or may not be descriptive. There are plenty of times where you might have something that's just like technical adjustments, and it's just moving things. If the IBO needs to go out and it says, "Oh, we've got enough paper to last us for years, but what we really need is more chairs." A change between our paper or general supplies budget to a furniture line. That's all sort of technical changes, and so there's are parts of it that aren't even interesting on that regard, but there are certain things that it is really sort of difficult to parse out. So my suggestion would be to reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to talk you through it. And then Kathy has a question about the contribution to Medicaid and Medicare. So Medicaid is primarily state funded. The comptroller actually has a really great breakout of the flow of federal funds to the city and the state and the way that that impacts it. I will go ahead and if the comms team could try and find that within the next 4 minutes. If they can't, that's fine. But I would recommend going to the comptroller's website. They do really great research as well. They are a fellow researching entity often, and so you can reach out to their website and see if you can find that as well. But it does have the flow of Medicaid dollars through. And then the city does contribute or contributes to people's Medicare payments for retirees. And so that's a different side of it. But there is something that the city pays essentially within the personnel services budget to that. So, and then we've got a question from Chris that's on the financial reconciliation. Can you talk about the savings program or all other adjustments? And maybe using DSS or DHS as an example. Yes, so let's say, Chris, that I say I am going to spend for like DHS, the Department of Homelessness Services or Homeless Services. Let's say I think that I'm going to spend $10 million on single family shelter costs for a particular fiscal year. That's a really small number, but I'm just using round ones. But let's say I say that it's going to be $10 million, but my uptake to the program ends up only being $9 million. I might take a savings there where essentially it's just a reestimate. It's not necessarily that I'm cutting the budget to bring it down to what I'm actually spending on. There's the other side of this is, let's say I'm an agency and I've got a budgeted headcount of 100 people, but I throughout the year on average just have about 90. There's going to be, some savings that are essentially accrued from the fact that I don't have all of my positions filled. We might not cut the headcount per se, but we could end up taking the dollars as savings. It really sort of depends on what the overall fiscal situation of the city is and what OMB is deciding to do at that particular point in time. You'll hear a lot of things or a lot about things called PEGs or Program to Eliminate the Gap. It's not necessarily budget cuts, but it's essentially ways of closing the gap. So either increased revenue or decreased expenditures. And so you'll hear a lot about those during times of sort of fiscal tension. We have a lot more questions. I don't think that we're going to be able to get to all of them, but I do want to thank everybody for joining today. If you do have more questions, always feel free to reach out. My email is open. You can also email Malik and Hannah, and we're just really happy to talk budget with all of you today. And so if you want to review this later, you can always hop on and take a look at the recording. But I think we are probably going to close it out here soon. So thanks again, folks, and we'll talk with all of you soon.